Hi there, folks. Eric from Hit Subscribe here, and I am doing another video in the series I do that is the questions that we are asked by clients, usually, or sometimes prospects, or maybe even friends of Hit Subscribe, and they are wondering about something to do with digital marketing or SEO. I probably should work on like a tighter lead in for this, but anyway, it's a series of questions that we get asked, and whenever it makes sense, I try to generalize something a client has asked for the channel and answer it in abstract, non-client specific terms. And today I've got an example of just that sort of thing. The question is basically, what is Moz's spam score, and should I be worried if I feel like I have a high spam score through Moz? This came up because a client noticed their spam score in a heads up display I had. They saw their own website, and I have a heads up display wherein it shows a spam score for every site in a search result. And they looked at theirs and said, that seems high. Should I be worried about that? And is it high? And generally, how do I interpret Moz's spam score? So I'm going to walk through that here. The first thing that I'll do is speak to, they have right here on their site, is this a high spam score or not? And in the case of the client that I was talking to, the answer was first and foremost, it isn't. It seems higher than other sites you see, but it was under this 30%. So Moz says that 1 to 30% is considered low, 31 to 60 medium, and anything above 61 or 61 and above is high. So first and foremost, that can help anchor you on the map. Now, let's dive in a little bit to what spam score is for Moz. Moz defines their spam score as the percentage of sites with similar features to the site you're researching that they have found to be penalized by Google. So basically what they're saying is if you put a given URL in abc.com and they say that abc.com site has a spam score of 50%, what they're saying is 50% of sites that look like abc.com are penalized by Google. Now, that it's a little subtle and it's a little indirect what they mean by that. So think of it this way. Here's kind of an analogy. Imagine that you brought your car into a mechanic and you were wondering if the car was safe. Now, the mechanic doesn't do an under-the-hood look at your car. He doesn't actually go in there and start sizing things up and making an assessment of the car. Instead, he glances at it and says, I see that you have rust on the hood, and I can tell that your tires are visibly low. So I think your car has a safety or an unsafety score of 80%. And what that really means in this metaphor is the mechanic looks at your car superficially, sees two things, and is saying 80% of the time when I look at a car, if it has rust on the hood and if it has visibly low tires, 80% of the time I have found that that car would be unsafe to drive. So it isn't a determination of your car. It is rather a look at the mechanic's history of looking at cars and looking at superficial features of those cars. So it's kind of a snap judgment of the safety score. So in this case, Moz is making a snap judgment based on external factors and simple properties of websites, whether they look similar to sites that have been found to be spammy in the past. So why not just, answer the question as to whether the site is spammy or not? And the short answer is I don't think Moz probably knows, because the way you would know if Google thought your site was spammy is in your search console. They would tell you as much, you would get penalized. So Moz might be able to make some determinations of this from the outside in. But their goal here isn't really to dive deep into it and evaluate the spamminess of a site. They're really trying to provide a superficial metric, because their intended use case here is for you to be looking at sites that might link to your website and get a sense of whether those sites are probably spammy or not. So an imperfect snap judgment measure is good enough. So if I have a site and somebody's offering a backlink to me, and I put that domain into Moz and it tells me it has a spam score of 80%, I might tell the person offering that backlink, it's okay, don't worry about it. Now, that might be a false positive. The site may be perfectly fine. Google might love that site, who knows? But the idea here is it's helping quickly and superficially evaluate your backlink profile, probably en masse. Like, you're probably taking a look at your backlink profile holistically to get a feel for what the average spam score is in your site's backlink profile. profile. So what I'm getting at here is Moz is really intending this for you to make quick determinations and judgments that don't need to be incredibly precise, and to do so in batch. And that's a much different thing than if you were trying to evaluate, say, your own site. So what I'm saying here is I would not use Moz's spam score to learn anything about your own site. And that kind of circles back to the premise here. So if you have a spam score from Moz's site, or from Moz, and even if it's medium or high, this doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with your website. So if you're looking at Moz's features, they identify here not the exact algorithm, but they have a number of things, and some examples of those are if your website doesn't have a high number of pages, if it has a top-level domain that's associated with spam domains, so .stream or .biz, if it has Google Tag Manager or not. These are the things they're looking at. So you could create a site that Google was perfectly fine with that ticked a lot of these checkboxes as being spammy and maybe had a 90% spam score, and the site would still be perfectly fine. You wouldn't learn very much about your own site from running it through this Moz evaluation. What you're going to learn about, through your own site is if Google is penalizing you, you'll go into Search Console and you will see that they are penalizing you. So you don't really need this level of ambiguity or this level of indirection to get a feel for what's going on. And even if you don't have Search Console set up or you're not really sure how to do that, if absolutely nothing on your site is ranking, if you Google, site:yoursite.com and Google doesn't show you anything, you know that they're not indexing you. If your site is dramatically underperforming and nothing is showing up in search, there's a decent chance that you have been penalized. So there are ways to make that determination that are much, much more direct than Moz's spam score. So if you see a high spam score in Moz for your site, and that strikes you as odd, if you can't explain that or are curious about it, what you can do is take a run through these signals of theirs, the 27 signals that they have identified, and see if you can determine which things apply to your site that might be driving up your spam score. And then if you're so inclined, if those seem like they might be a problem, then you could theoretically do something about it. But I don't generally in a vacuum view that as a good use of your time. Because, for instance, let's say that you're going through here and you say, oh, well, I don't have the double-click ad tag, I don't have Google Tag Manager set up, I don't have a Facebook pixel set up, and so on and so forth. Those might be factors that are making my spam score appear higher. There's other things like you don't have a phone number or an email address on your website. Okay, so you don't have those things. Do you want them on your site? Do you have a use case for them? Because if you go and you start doing that stuff, it's going to take effort. It's instrumentation overhead to set up. Maybe you don't want your phone number on your website, etc. So you might be doing things you don't even want or that aren't in your best interests simply to see this spam score to go down when Moz is flat out telling you this spam score being high doesn't mean that your site is spammy. So I would be very hesitant to use the spam score to drive any action on your part. If it's high and you're worried about it, you might keep an eye on it. You might, monitor your Google Search Console to see if there are any issues, but I wouldn't necessarily act on it unless maybe it leads you to a hypothesis. So there are some things in here where if you have lots and lots of external outlinks, for instance, that is associated with more spammy sites. So there's things about your linking here that you might identify and maybe not like. Another one I'm seeing here is presence of poison words. So if you have a lot of things about adult content and gaming and so on, and that's driving up your spam score, you might identify that as something you don't actually want to be true of your site. So if you do a site search and you discover that maybe you were hacked and somebody's putting a bunch of stuff about pharmaceuticals or crypto or adult content or whatever, you're going to want to fix that for reasons other than Moz's spam score. So at best, if you're starting to dig in as to why is my spam score high and you discover things, the things that you discover and what you might do is going to be really more governed by other factors than just trying to bring your spam score down in Moz. So what I would summarize this as, if you're looking at your own spam score and you think that it's high, first of all, verify that it is or isn't. But if it is and you're worried about that, I would treat it more as a curiosity than anything else. So go dig in a little, see if you can ascertain why it's high, but be pretty hesitant to do anything about it, especially if you see nothing through Search Console to indicate that you have any problems, especially if things are ranking and everything seems to be fine on your end. Then I would be extremely skeptical and hesitant of doing anything about the spam score, so to speak. So I hope that is helpful. I hope that makes sense, and I will catch you all next time.